I think of creativity as three different states: flow, focus, and stuck. Because it happens. It's too bad. I find most schools or even training programs don't really address what it's like to get stuck or blocked or creative blocks and how to get out of them. But yet it's something that all creatives need to do. So we would talk about it in my classes with my students. I taught creatives for over 19 years at the college level, and darn it, they got stuck. So we would talk about it, right? We worked on a lot of group projects, and so we got to experience it together as a group. And really, before you can even understand how to get unstuck, or even what the flow state kind of is, or why you need focus and why you need flow, you got to understand the basic building blocks of creativity. So we've got flow, focus, and stuck. And I want you to think about flow as kind of taking that step back. So imagine, like, if you're in a camera, you're zooming out so you can see more of the picture. But then there's times that you want to get into focus, where you want to zoom in and you want to see the details. And that's very valuable too. Sometimes we spend more time in flow, and sometimes we spend more time in focus. Think about flow as adding information, like thought clouds, ideas, extra things. And think about focus as removing, like editing out, taking away things, like removing distractions. And so you do this balance back and forth between them. And I love the editing process because I feel like it's a pretty even balance between focus and flow. So when I worked with my students, they often did most of their presentation material on their computer, right? We're all accustomed to that. But that didn't mean that that's how we were going to present the information, because oftentimes it was presented or it was projected, it was shown in a different way. And so as they're zooming in and working on the little details, perfecting their font positions and their sketches and such, we would then take it and we would print it out so that we would see it in a different way. And that's moving into flow. That's adding new information, a whole new perspective. We'd put it on the table and we'd look at it. We'd hang it on the walls and we'd look at it. If it was something that was going to be projected, we would project it in the way that we were ultimately going to project it so we could see different details. So we're zooming out, and then they're like, oh, I didn't notice that one word's misspelled. So we'd zoom back in. We would go into focus and correct that word, and then let's reprint and let's come back. And it was a constant back and forth of flow and focus. So that is ultimately what we're looking for, is that nice rhythm between flow and focus. Sometimes more in flow, sometimes more in focus, sometimes in the middle. And when we think about flow, it normally feels easy, effortless. Time normally isn't a concern, and ideas seem to be plentiful. When you're working at optimal levels, that's what flow is. And it feels like an endless source of energy. When you're in focus, that's where you're taking distractions out of view, and you might get more quiet and you might become more still, and details are clearer. It consumes a lot of energy to do focus work. And some of you might know that, because if you spend a lot of time in focus, you understand what a drain that is. And that's why you might feel like you need to get up and move around so you could recirculate some of that energy. But if you build in some flow, some of that time to get into the flow is an endless source of energy. So when you can balance a rhythm between the two, you can balance it out and always feel like you have energy. And that's how I feel when I work. Everything I do a blend with intent, a blend of flow and focus. Even if it's a pure focus task, I figure out how I can interject some flow. For me, that normally is putting things on paper. So even if it's doing some of my calculations on paper as opposed to, say, in Excel, that's what I do. I make some notes in there, because when I'm working pen to paper, I start igniting what my flow is, because I get more input. I get the tactile input from the paper. I can hear all the senses, hear my pencil going across the paper. I'm moving things around, so I've got some body movement, because I might have to flip the page of the paper and get it right there. So that's bringing in more input, and that gives more energy. And so then as I'm then transferring to a more focus where I'm working in an Excel document, it balances out. One's giving me energy, one's taking energy. And as long as I can balance them, I'm going to be okay. And stuck is where you have no movement at all. You're not doing one or either of those things. You can be in overwhelm or perhaps self-doubt. And this not only drains your energy, it brings you to a complete stop. That's why it's called stuckness, right? Because you're not moving. The key to getting out of stuckness is to move. It's just to know whether or not, gosh, I was doing so much focus work and now I feel stuck. Oh, let me see if I can add some flow in here, and that will get you unstuck. Same thing with flow. Sometimes you're like, oh, I was bringing in so many ideas. It was so much fun. I had so much fun, but now I got overwhelmed. So if you feel stuck, like, I don't know which one to pick, you're in overwhelm, you came from flow, then it's time to eliminate something. And that pushes you towards focus. And that gives you the rhythm. It's really just the rhythm between the two. And as long as you can keep moving between the two, that's the key.